All right, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Again, I'm Hyacinth McKinley, and today's webinar is Learning with the Learning Community, Trauma-Informed Approaches. So as we like to do with all of our webinar events, we do so by reciting the promise of community action. We do so because we feel that it grounds us in our work, and despite the various places that we are throughout the country, this is the one thing that binds us together and that helps us get into work every day. So if you wanted to read it out loud or to yourself, it states that community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So, a little bit about this webinar series that we're doing. This is actually the 4th installment of our Learning with the Learning Community series, and that's because for the last 16 months, yes, it's been a very long time, but for the last 16 months, we've had about 130 agencies engaged with us as a part of this learning community in the various learning community groups. You can see here on the slide that these different groups coalesce around specific program or service delivery strategies related to specific anti-poverty focused areas. So today we're going to be talking about our Trauma-Informed Approaches group, but if you attended any of our other webinars, you might have heard from some of the participants in our Bundling Services group, or also in our Financial Empowerment group who had a webinar yesterday. So we have about 5 closed groups as a part of the learning community. And the purpose of these different cohorts is really to analyze the outcomes of our network and to identify effective, promising, and innovative practice models that can then be replicated throughout the entire CSBG network. But really our underlying goal in these efforts is to build our capacity to fight poverty effectively. And this is of critical importance because we are community action. It's stated even in our logo, it's the huggy heart. Anti-poverty is at the heart of what we do and who we are as a network. So a little bit more about the structure of the learning community, just to give you guys some background on how it works and how these groups meet and form and go through this process. Our members usually attend meetings, usually on a bi-monthly basis, actually on this webinar platform that we have, WebEx. But we talk about specific program areas or strategies related to those overall focus areas that they talk about. But really the central focus of these meetings that we have is really to encourage that peer-to-peer communication and that peer-to-peer sharing in all of the different topic areas that they're focused on. One of our big things in the learning community is to really encourage a community or a sense of being open and being willing to share and talk about lessons learned and even the challenges that we're facing, because as we've learned in our groups, and I'm sure some of our presenters today will reiterate, that one question that you're really kind of nervous about sharing with the group, I can almost guarantee that probably at least 3 other people in the group are facing the same problem that you are. So we really try to encourage our participants that there are no dumb questions, there's no wrong way to do things, but this is really a community of agencies that are doing these programs together and that are really committed to trying to make their programs and services more effective. So a little bit more about our structure. Again, we have those various groups. We have about 5 closed groups where groups had to apply to be a part of it, and then our open groups where they actually convene during webinar events such as this one. Again, one thing to reiterate is that although the members come together around a specific topic, they each are working on their own individual projects or service delivery strategies that are unique to the needs of the community that they represent. Again, we really try to encourage an open and conductive environment for experimentation, and eventually each LCG will have the opportunity to share their lessons learned and successes with the network, and that's part of what we're doing with this webinar series, and we're very excited to continue that work at this year's annual convention, which we'll be talking about later on in today's webinar. So a little bit more about the structure. As I mentioned, the learning community cohort goes over about 16 months, and that is divided into 4 phases. Each phase focuses on specific aspects of their service delivery strategy and providing them with the resources and TA that they need to finally get to this endpoint where we are, which is what we call the practice transformation phase. It's in this phase that after spending months about learning about resources, different approaches, learning about kind of the background knowledge needed to implement the programs that they were interested in. Now is the time where they're actually implementing their program. So this is a time to collect data and also to continue to provide encouragement and further needed resources in TA to participants in our learning community groups so that they can see their programs come to fruition in their community. So, specifically about the group that we're going to be talking about today, you're going to be hearing from participants, obviously, in our trauma-informed approaches group. So just to give you a little bit of background on what trauma-informed care is, because we know that it's a bit of a newer topic for our network, but you can see here on the screen that it is really an organizational and treatment framework that involves understanding, recognizing, and responding to the different effects of all types of trauma. Becoming a trauma-informed community action agency means recognizing that both consumers and sometimes even your staff might have different types of trauma in their lives, and that the stress associated with working in this sector or receiving services from the human services sector can impact staff and clients in a plethora of ways. So, it has been our privilege to work with two highly qualified and excellent subject matter experts in this effort. Elena Cohen, who is an external consultant. She has a lot of experience with the Community Action Network and specifically looking at toxic stress and the effects of trauma on children. And we have Catherine Marshall, who, of course, I'm sure many of you recognize her name, but she has helped us in terms of the coordination efforts with this group and really kind of helping group members to look more at the structure of what they're doing and focus on the theory of change efforts that are involved in becoming a trauma-informed agency. So with that, I'm actually going to skip a little bit ahead and turn it over to our first presenter for today. We are going to be hearing from West Cap. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to Robin and Corin. So ladies, you are on. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
My name is Corin Tuberty. I am the Homeless Prevention Programs Manager at West Cap in Wisconsin.
And I'm Robin Thibodeau, and I'm the Associate Director at West Cap.
You can go ahead to the next slide.
So I'm just going to give, this is Robin, I'm going to just give a little overview, brief of our agency. We serve 7 Wisconsin counties, as you can see on the map there. Just to give you a picture, it's about a little over 5,300 square miles. The largest city in our service territory is approximately 16,000 people. However, we are very fortunate. We have 2 universities within our service territory and 2 technical colleges. So we have a lot of educational resources, and County Human Services are very robust. So we have a lot of services, even though we are a very rural area. You can go to the next slide, Hyacinth. So our agency, as you can see there, provides a lot of different housing resources. We are a community housing development organization, so we both develop and manage affordable housing through tax credits and federal home program. We also have 2 Section 8 programs that we administer in 3 of our counties. It covers 3 of our counties. We have a whole host of different homeless prevention programs that Corin will talk about later in terms of what they've done in their trauma-informed care approach. We have a SOAR program, Social Security Outreach, Access, and Recovery, that helps homeless folks that have mental health diagnoses and or AODA diagnoses to get disability benefits. We have a weatherization program, and then we also do the LIHEAP program, energy assistance, in 2 of our counties. So very heavy on the housing resources for our area. We also have a number of food access and resources programs to help people with food insecurity. And we have a focus on adult education through a skills enhancement program that helps people with expenses and career counseling to return to school, a 2-year program or less, and also adult literacy program. So that's us in a nutshell. You can move to the next slide, Hyacinth.
So looking specifically at the housing assistance or rental assistance programs, some of the programs that I manage are our supportive housing programs that also provide some rental assistance. So the tenant-based rental assistance program, we use home dollars funded through the state for that, and then we partner with other agencies to provide case management. We do rapid rehousing that is funded by HUD's Continuum of Care program and the Emergency Solutions Grant program. We also do permanent supportive housing, which is funded through the Continuum of Care program at HUD. And then, as Robin mentioned, the Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers for 3 of our counties and the Social Security Outreach Access and Recovery program focused specifically on individuals who are experiencing homelessness. Within these programs, the housing assistance programs, we have taken a trauma-informed approach as part of just our overall philosophy in our department. So being trauma-informed and understanding trauma was not something new that was for this particular department, although it was for other parts of our agency. So we were able to kind of take what we knew within the homeless services that we were providing and figure out how can we bring that approach and bring that knowledge to the other areas of our agency. Can we do the next slide? So our goals when we joined the Learning Community Group, we wanted to learn how can we educate our agency and our coworkers about trauma and what trauma-informed services are, both what does it mean, what does it look like, and how is it different than what we do now. We wanted to identify what steps needed to happen in order to become trauma-informed as an entire agency, and how do we make that culture change. That's a huge thing, and it doesn't happen quickly, and it's not to be taken lightly, so we were really hoping to get some support and some ideas around that. And then we were also hoping that we would learn how to best provide training to other service agencies in our area about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed approaches. Next slide.
So our team, we started out with 3 of us, me and Corin, and then, excuse me, sorry, Christina Bechtel, when we first started, was our SOAR coordinator. And she was really our cheerleader and did a great job getting us going and keeping us on track with all the calls and writing the goals. Unfortunately, she took another job at a different agency, and we lost her.
So Robin and I had to learn how to motivate ourselves.
Yes.
You can go to the next slide. So the way we laid out this slide was looking at what was our goal plan when we started this, the Learning Community Group 16 months ago. So we wanted to have the 3 of us attend at least 5 different trauma-informed care trainings by the end of August in 2016. And so we did do that. We attended a lot of different things. Some were train the trainer trainings. We also saw speakers who had lived experience with trauma, being a trauma survivor, and talk about how the systems of care that they encountered, what helped, what hurt, those sorts of things, and other just basic how do you make trauma-informed change within an agency, within a service provision, and that sort of thing. We wanted to have all WestCap employees and at least 75% of our board members attending a trauma-informed training by the end of December, the end of 2016, so we could establish a baseline knowledge of trauma and its impact on people who experience poverty. We had that training at the end of January, so we were a little off on our timeline, but we did an all-staff in-service and then also had a separate presentation to our agency's board of directors. I think we did that in March. because we had some snow days, as we tend to have in Wisconsin, and so we had to reschedule a little bit with that. Next step that we still need to complete, we need to review agency and program policies to determine the extent to which they reflect trauma-informed principles. And then we also are planning to do an agency-wide assessment to determine where are we in being a trauma-informed agency, not only about an understanding of trauma for the people that we serve, but also as an agency for our employees, are we promoting trauma-informed principles, and also for our clients. And then by the end of July, we want to have a calendar of ongoing trainings and activities that will continue to support the practice of being trauma-informed. So some of the brainstorm ideas we've had are things like having book groups or book clubs with books that are related to trauma, brown bag lunch events where it can be just a 1-hour learning session about a trauma-related topic, ranging to, suicide intervention trainings or, QPR, the question, persuade, refer process as well. So we want to develop that so we can keep that idea fresh in everybody's mind and continue that learning process.
And one of the things we've started doing, just to keep it in front of everybody as well, is to put short articles or blurbs in our agency-wide newsletter that goes out to our staff. It's not a community-wide newsletter. It's specific to our staff.
Yes. We can go to the next slide.
So some of our challenges and successes. Like I mentioned earlier, we lost a team member, and although that might not seem like such a big deal since there's 2 of us left, it's really nice to have more than just the 2 of us. So we'll be recruiting. And then we did lose some key agency staff. So our asset manager over the community housing and development piece resigned in January, and so losing her, and then also another staff person in that department had to leave to take care of her mother, and then some of the rest of us having to step in and having our time diverted really kind of slowed down our process, but we're back on track with that. One of the good things that came out of that as far as the success goes is that because I was the one that took over that department in tenant management, I've already started instituting trauma-informed principles into things like our tenant selection criteria. How do we make that criteria not so restrictive to people that might need our low-income housing? Also, we've opened up all of our units for folks to have pets, which was a really big deal. And just doing different things with the tenant rules and interactions with tenants to make it not a top-down to tenants or adversarial approach when things go wrong, but to have more of that trauma-informed approach to solving problems like non-payment of rent, for instance, instead of right away sending an eviction notice, a 5-day notice, calling and having a conversation first. So that's been kind of an unexpected experiment in how we're going to change principles across the agency and policies and how we interact with people. So go ahead, Corin.
Other successes that we saw when we did our agency-wide training, and this is something that I know that I spoke a lot about in our learning group, that one of our concerns was some of our less quote-unquote touchy-feely programs, so weatherization or our transportation department, that how were they going to take this trauma-informed approach and this, agency-wide transformation. And what was really exciting is that we really didn't get any pushback, and that when we've done training, we got great insights from all of our departments. It wasn't just the social workers or the case managers or our literacy volunteers that provided these good insights, but the guys who work on crews and are out and have a construction background, that they were really providing great insight about the trauma that can really just come with being in poverty and all those small and large traumas that can come day to day. And that was really great to hear that across our entire agency and hear people sharing thoughts and ideas and insights. And then we also have experienced staff reaching out for more information and resources for their own personal use. So they, you know, identifying that maybe they have experienced trauma or they have a child who's experienced trauma, and so reaching out for trauma-specific therapists or other resources, reading materials, support groups, and that sort of thing, which I think is just fantastic to know that even beyond just reaching out to clients and program participants, but our own staff are understanding the impact of trauma in their lives and how that can affect their day-to-day living and looking for ways to address that. I would say, along with what Robin was saying with some of the changeover, the turnover we've had in some of our key staff, that trauma is part of the training now for new hires, and so our new tenant manager, that's part of day one, is reading up on what does it mean to be trauma-informed and how does trauma impact people? What does it look like? What are the symptoms that you think are, you know, just somebody's odd personality or something like that, but that could actually be a reflection of their trauma. So we're incorporating that into all of our new hire training, is that we are a trauma-informed agency, and this is what it means for you as an employee. We can go to the next slide.
Okay, so our next steps are doing an agency-wide evaluation to see where people are at, what they think is going well in our agency as far as trauma-informed approach, what things we might still need to do, and I'm positive there's a list of those because we're just starting this process. But beyond that, also surveying our clients and seeing what their experiences is. And then, like I said before, recruiting folks so that we have a trauma team that other people in the agency can go to for information and resources that will keep this trauma-informed approach vibrant and alive in front of folks, so that it's not something that we just get trained on and then it goes by the wayside, because that can so easily happen. And then someday, we really would like to be a resource to the community. And we have a lot of support in that as well, because other agencies in our communities are also looking at trauma-informed approaches to services. And so I feel like we'll have a really good network a couple of years down the road of a lot of agencies that are really on board with trauma-informed approaches to services, so that we can all support each other, and that clients that go to different agencies will really get a good experience at multiple agencies.
All right. Thank you, ladies, so much for walking us through what you all have been up to. It sounds like you certainly have been busy over the last 16 months and have experienced a lot of ups and downs, but it really sounds like you made a lot of promising progress in the work that you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
So don't see any questions at the moment, but if anyone has any questions for our presenters from WESCAP, please send them in through the chat. We'll hold for a little bit so we can get some questions for these ladies. And if not, again, we'll have time for a panel discussion at the end, so you can still hear from these lovely ladies here at WESCAP. So any questions? Well, I will take everyone's silence to mean that you all did a wonderful job and you explained everything thoroughly. I see a question that's coming in that I think would be good for our panel discussion, so I'll hold on to that. But thank you, ladies, so much. Everyone is just stunned into silence with the amazing presentation that you gave, so thank you so very much.
Nice.
Oh, okay. Actually, no, we do have one question that came in. After hearing your presentation, one of our attendees asked, after what you've been going through, is there one particular assessment or type of assessment that you would recommend for agencies that are looking to get into this work?
We did not have a specific assessment that was, developed by one particular agency. I actually, when I was in graduate school, had actually done some trauma-informed work with a different agency and had pulled together a bunch of different resources. And so our plan is to use a survey or an assessment that's similar to that. And a large piece of that came from Community Connections, I believe is the name of the organization, and in kind of using that scale of determining, what are those factors that impact being trauma-informed and what kinds of questions relate to those different categories. So when we have that solidified and put together, it's something that we will send to our learning group facilitator so that it can be shared with anybody who wants to have access to that.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Yes, please share that. That would be great. So another question that came in was, how has your work in terms of making your agency more trauma-informed, how has that been received by your staff?
Really well. It was received really well. And as I was saying earlier, I think we all had some concerns about basically our construction crews, the guys that do our homework program that are doing weatherization work and stuff like that. They're not coming from a social services background. They're coming from a construction background, and so it would be something kind of foreign, so we weren't quite sure. And honestly, some of our main office staff that unfortunately bear the brunt of people's stress and crisis on the phone, and we had some concern about how were they going to handle it, because I would say they haven't had the most trauma-informed approach to clients necessarily in the past. And I think that there were a lot of light bulb moments in the training that people started to recognize that different client reactions, or even family or friends or neighbors in their own personal life, the way people were behaving, acting, things that they were saying or doing, and that when we started to talk about, here's how this relates to trauma, and having a trauma worldview. And so if you don't trust the entire world, what have we done so far as an agency to earn that when we've only known them for 5 minutes? And suddenly that light bulb came on, and I think to pressure off, one of the comments that we had, there was an anonymous comment, was, this isn't about me. I'm just the person that's hearing it, but their yelling, their anger isn't about me personally. It's about something else that's going on, and I just need to stay calm. And so I think, which is also part of being trauma-informed for our staff, is saying, you're right, this isn't about you, and so let's take that burden off of you. And that has already made changes in the way that some of our staff are relating to people who call in or who are long-term clients, is recognizing that the way somebody is responding to them may have nothing to do with you as the employee or the representative of the agency. So it was just really, really well received, I think.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. That is great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm seeing a lot of other questions come in, but I think they would be really good for our panel discussion, where we can hear from all of our presenters about their perspectives. We're getting some more general questions on maybe resources and strategies and approaches for being trauma-informed in general. So I think I'm going to save a lot of these questions until our panel discussion at the end, but keep sending them in. We will definitely have time to hold for them at the end. But ladies, thank you so much. It was great to hear from the team at West Cap. And now I think we're going to move on to our next presenter for today. You're going to be hearing from Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission. So I will unmute Dawn, and she will be on, and I'm going to pass you control of the slides. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead.
I am, all right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I'm Dawn Fogarty. I'm Vice President for Family Services Department here at Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission. And I'm going to skip to the introducing the teammates that are here today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Kelly Horn, and I'm the Financial Empowerment Program Manager here.
My name is Lorraine Moore, and I'm the Youth Build Program Director.
I'm Natasha Biggle. I'm the Family and Community Partnership Coordinator for Head Start.
I'm Lauren Wolfson, Vice President for Children's Services.
And we have a couple of other team members who are missing. We have Margie Meehan, she's our Associate Director for Community Services, Joellen Dawson, who's our Compliance Manager, and Lindsay Lilly, who is our CCC Program Director. And Karis Hawkins is our Family Support Coordinator with our Scholar House project. I think, did I miss anyone? I don't think so. Okay. I was not a very good person in giving directions to on these slides, so I didn't follow my homework or directions. So I'm going to go over the introduction to our agency just verbally before we start with our slides. And Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission serves the 8 northernmost counties in Kentucky. And if you picture Kentucky as kind of a triangle, we're at the very top tip of the triangle. The 3 counties that are at the very top are urban core counties, and then we have a ring of 5 rural counties surrounding us. So we serve quite a mix of urban and rural folks. We have our Head Start program is our major services that we provide. We provide, we oversee a CSBG grant, so our community services. We have a community service center in all 8 counties. And we provide case management and all of the other CSBG service category programs out of those centers, including energy assistance with LIHEAP, as well as a lot of energy and other financial assistance through other discretionary funds and local fiscal court funding. We have our Youth Build program and our Senior Work program, and both of those programs do more workforce development with the different age populations. We have our financial counseling and homeownership counseling services. We do quite a bit of housing. We have 2 housing complexes, and we do weatherization. And our 3rd housing project is actually a Scholar House. It just opened up this last year, and we just fully leased up on that. And I'm not sure if folks on the call know what a Scholar House is, but it's affordable housing for single parents who are seeking their college degrees. So we have 45 affordable housing units for those families. What we were looking to gain and what programs we wanted to strengthen by participating in this learning community group, we really took a broad look at our overall agency, and what I believe we kind of left out of several of our first meetings with the thoughts of basically looking at increasing our supports and our education throughout the agency at all levels. So from direct service to mid-level management to our HR and finance departments to upper and executive management here at the organization. How would we have rated our organization's capacity in trauma-informed care at the beginning of our cohort? We were just discussing this a little while ago, and we think we came into this as probably a 2 on a scale between 1 and 5, and that's simply because with the time that we have been facilitating and running our Head Start, I do believe that Head Start in and of itself is kind of ahead of the game in terms of being family-centered and trauma-informed, so their expertise in this group really helped. So our program planning and implementation. We actually started, I guess, a little bit on the opposite end of the group before us, And these are the slides that are on here. We started with our self-assessment, and so I'll just kind of go through, and what we did was we decided to use the results of the self-assessment on trauma-informed practices to get a starting point and where we wanted to focus our efforts in terms of carrying out our goals. Our self-assessment information, we held focus groups, and this just, I'm not going to go through every single slide, and I'm sure you guys can look at these later and see the results, but the self-assessment covered the following areas in terms of what we were looking for feedback from our staff and those who took the self-assessment quiz, or I guess assessment. Supporting staff development, which included the training and education of staff supervision, support, and self-care. It's not letting me advance, sorry. There we go. Creating safe and supportive environment. Yeah, it doesn't really want to move forward.
Would you like for me to jump in? Oh, there you go.
If you want to start advancing them, that's fine.
No problem.
And we looked at quite a bit under that. And then how we are in terms of involving consumers, and then reviewing policies. What we found really, and this is, you'll see kind of overall as we're going through the slides, is that a lot of what we expected we found. Most staff didn't really know, the staff who took part in the self-assessment and the folks who took part in it, we ended up having about a 40-30 split on most things. Folks did not really even know what traumatic stress is. Couldn't even identify, you know, like a real definition of it. 38% disagreed with that, and then 43% agreed. The next question was how it affects the brain and body. So you'll see again that 40% stated that they did not know that. Again, 52% said that they knew and understood how trauma affects a child's development, so that was good. But again, that leaves like the other half that really did not know. And then we just kind of looked at, you know, how people felt like they were trained in the different areas of childhood and adult trauma and the impacts that actually has on staff, if they could ID triggers, and if they felt comfortable with knowing or if they knew de-escalation strategies. Staff did feel like 61% agreed that they were taught how to establish and maintain healthy boundaries. So there were some good things that we saw here and some not so alarming. Topics related to trauma were addressed in team meetings. Most team meetings do not address those issues. And then as well as self-care addressed in team meetings, 43% felt like it was, but another 31% did not. And so as we go through here, I think some of the really good things were that we did have a lot of policies and procedures in place that were supportive of trauma-informed, being a trauma-informed organization, meaning we have a formal system in place for evaluation of performance. Our agency provides opportunity for staff input, and then we basically said that we didn't have a lot of outside expertise providers for ongoing education in this area. So I'm just going to go through these a little bit more to move us along. Physical safety was pretty high. We have been doing a lot of work over the last year to make sure that all of our centers and all of our facilities are well lit, and we have security in those centers. I don't know why it keeps going back on me, sorry. I'm not doing that. There we go. So a supportive environment, it was pretty obvious that our environments were pretty supportive and that we value confidentiality and we show acceptance, you know, for differences with our clients and with our staff members. We do have some work to do in terms of written plans for safety, and if those written plans, you know, who you do that with and how that fits into the case management role. "59 of our respondents agreed or strongly agreed that consumers are given the opportunity to evaluate program and offer suggestions for improvement." So that was a good sign that we are doing a fairly good job of involving our consumers. And then when it came to our policies and procedures, you know, it kind of fell off a little bit again in the fact that staff, you know, weren't really aware if we have written procedures that provide that trauma-informed services approach. So what we decided to do was take all that information and put that into some next steps. And I'll talk about that here in just a minute, but I wanted to go over the program planning and implementation, the rest of that. The current status really is that we have followed through and we are kind of in the middle of a lot of these next steps. Our process, once we did that self-assessment again, was to kind of define as a work group what steps we were getting ready to take and go ahead and carry those out. What we decided to do was we initiated at the beginning of 2017, so in January we started sort of just an informational session in terms of sending out just different videos, so on trauma-informed services. And so for 6 weeks we sent out a video each week to all staff members and encouraged them to watch that video and then talk with their supervisor, and then we talked about it in our team meetings. And then what we did at the same time after that was we started doing a video to show, we actually had a video filmed here on site with our executive staff members, kind of introducing ourselves and what different parts of what is a trauma-informed organization and how we're trying to get that into play here at NKCAC. And I did send the link, I think, to Hyacinth, but hopefully we'll be able to maybe get it into a YouTube link, and then I can send that out again so people can see that. It was a really well done video by a local professional, and we now show that at our onboarding education session that we do bi-monthly for all new staff. We have also taken part in several outside and local trainings, and we just applied for membership to the Tri-State Trauma Network, a local trauma network that will be able to access additional trainings and additional certifications. So some unexpected challenges, I would say, and you guys can chime in at any point in time. I think for me, it just felt like we got a really slow start, and you know, things would kind of stall, and a lot of it was just because staff are so heavily involved in so many other things that it was hard to find time to put the effort and really get things going. And so that was a little bit of a challenge, I think, for me, as I don't know about you guys. Any other challenges that you can think of? Yeah. And then unexpected successes, I think once we decided to really hit the ground running, when we started setting some timelines at the beginning of this year and started getting information out, things just really opened up very quickly and things started happening very quickly. So that was unexpected, and it was really a good thing that the staff responded really well to all the information that we were sending out. They've really, the staff who have seen the onboarding and orientation video are really happy with it. And then we did a screening of the Rich Hill movie, which we got that idea from another one of our learning community group members, and we did that last month for our leadership team and did a debriefing, and that was really well received. And we have the next viewing of that scheduled for June 7th with our direct line staff, so that's moving forward. And again, things I think just started happening very quickly, and you know, that was just a really positive thing. I think the other success was that when I look over our original plan, it looks like we were trying to find some partners or people that we thought would be good community partners, and what it turned out to be was that we ended up kind of getting partnerships with people that I didn't expect that we would, or other organizations. So we ended up meeting up with Women's Crisis Center, our local domestic violence service provider, and they allowed a couple of our staff members to attend some of their trauma-informed trainings most recently. So that was a good unexpected success as well. So our next steps, again, we paid a lot of attention to our onboarding and orientation. We are starting with those informational videos for staff, and then we have kind of some day 45 check-ins, and then that day 90 or day 60, really. It just kind of depends on where people are onboarding and the dates that they're onboarding. But every other month we have a big onboarding and orientation session through HR that they'll get to see that professional video that was done. Actually, they lovingly started calling it the infomercial, so we have that. And then we have annual training and development plans with frontline staff. We have agreed that, you know, mental health first aid every year, CPR and first aid. We did get all staff trained in Narcan administration because here in our region, unfortunately, heroin usage and dependency and overdoses are actually super, super high. It's a big prevalent issue here in our area. So that was just one thing that we felt like staff would feel more equipped to deal with that if it would present in their centers. And then we are hoping to reach out to Kentucky State Police and get them in to do some training. And then just the different trauma-informed services training, just different target audiences. And this year we just started our second strengths-based family worker credentialing class. We graduated 9 from our class last year, and that curriculum encompasses a lot of strengths-based work and trauma-informed for case management. And then with our leadership and management, support and self-care, being trauma-informed in terms of our supervision and how we provide that direct supervision, how we do follow-up, how we help debrief after different things that happen in each of our facilities, and then taking part in group efforts to increase our awareness throughout the agency. So we're going to be continuing to do that. We'll also continue working with outside groups and continue with our screenings of the Rich Hill documentary. We're looking at doing other documentaries as well to just kind of bring home to all of our staff, you know, these are the challenges and this is what our families are facing every day, and how can we work better with them to help facilitate that growth and change that we need to see. And then continuing to work with HR. We have changed our policy and procedure manual for all employees, and it has information in there about what a trauma-informed organization is and the expectations that all staff participate in those efforts, and you know, just kind of making sure that people are informed right away. You know, those are things that we're looking to do and that we're working on. I think that's it, unless anyone has.
The only thing I was going to say is that when you start this process, you really need to be prepared for secondary trauma in staff members, that it might trigger things for them. And I wouldn't call it a challenge. I would just call it something to be mindful of. Yeah,
to have resources kind of ready to go live with staff, especially, you know, once we started sending the videos out and they got a little bit more in depth with trauma-informed care. It was bringing up some things for staff that they hadn't really brought to the forefront before, as well as clearly that the viewing of Rich Hill, that documentary, you really have to build in time after that to do a very thorough debriefing and then follow up. So how to rate ourselves now? I would say probably we just talked about a 3, maybe even a 3.5. So.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for walking us through your self-assessment process and the ways that you guys have really thought differently or thought very intentionally about how to work this into your organizational structure, which I think is a very important part of being a trauma-informed agency. So thank you all so much. I just had a few questions that came in for the chat for you all. So when you were talking about next steps that you were working on, you mentioned that you were actually going to have your local police force come in and do some trainings with your staff or with clients. Can you talk a little bit more about what that would entail?
Do what? Yeah, I'm going to let Natasha talk about this because we talked about that sort of being part of the whole. That was really important in terms of like staff understanding safety and you know, going off-site or even handling, you know, mental health issues if they come into one of our facilities. So go ahead.
So a good portion of our staff are required to do home visits where they actually go to families' homes and connect with them in their safe space, which sometimes is not the safest for our staff. So we asked the Kentucky State Captain to come in. He does a really great home visit safety training. And he gave them a lot of really great information, and then he kind of worked into like, well, how can you be safe in your work environment, just because of the issue with the drug use in the area and it being so prevalent, and things for them to just watch out for and to kind of keep in the forefront of their minds. Something as simple as, do 2 people go knock on a door for a home visit? Which was pretty much a standard practice that our staff had, so they could both talk to staff. And he went through why that's not the safest approach and gave them some alternatives. So, and let them kind of practice that together by just giving them, he had slides of, oh, you go up to this house, how do you approach it? You're at this driveway, how might you approach this? So, I think they received that fairly well, and they've actually asked for him to come back because he talks about office space, he talks about your workspace, things to carry with you, things not to carry with you, things to remove from your glove box, you know, all kinds of things. And I think that just helps them see that we take their safety very, very seriously.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really interesting approach. Thank you. Another question that we had that came in through the chat is, you mentioned a couple of times about a documentary that you have been showing, or a series of documentaries that you have been showing. Can you talk a little bit more about those, maybe how you came across them, and what the overall response has been, if you can just elaborate on that a little bit more?
So the documentary is actually called Rich Hill, and one of our other learning community groups is the one who initially brought it up on one of our learning community group calls or webinars. And so we did some research, and it was actually playing on Netflix, and it's, you know, if you have a membership, it's free. So what we did is, as just our internal work group, we decided to go ahead and screen it first, you know, at home or just after hours, and kind of see what our response would be. And we felt like it was a good documentary to move forward and really sharing with staff, you know, kind of what that rural poverty is. And you know, it applies to the urban folks as well, but it really was a very good documentary on it followed 3 boys in Missouri, and you know, just the challenges that these kiddos are facing every day, just living in such poverty. And so we decided to go ahead and do kind of just different groups screenings for our staff, and we started with some of our direct line managers and from all of our different departments and brought them together and did that screening. And then I just got the debriefing questions off of internet from their website. So, and I feel like it was received very, very well. But again, it does bring up kind of, if you have a history with, growing up in poverty or a history with trauma yourself, it really brings that into focus, into the forefront for many, many staff members.
Thank you so much for that. And one of our attendees who's actually part of our trauma-informed group actually just shared the link, so we sent that out through the chat. So if you all would like to view that after today's webinar, we have the link that was made available in the chat. So thank you so much for sharing that, Dana. We appreciate it. So another question that we had that came in for you all was, how exactly did you go about arriving at the self-assessment that you administered and that you talked about? Can you talk about maybe some of the different templates or resources that you looked at in compiling that?
We actually received the self-assessment link from Elena, I think. Our subject matter expert sent that out to us, and so we just went to the website and downloaded the assessment, and I want to say it's called Trauma-Informed Organizational Self-Assessment, and it is pretty lengthy. It does go through a lot of different areas. And it looks like it was adopted from the National Center on Family Homelessness, Trauma-Informed Organizational Self-Assessment, and Creating Cultures of Trauma-Informed Care. So I don't know if Elena can send out that link.
Sure, we can put that in the follow-up email that we send out after today's event, no problem. I can reach out to her and get that. So I think that was all the questions that I see for you so far. Again, I've gotten some other questions, and thank you all, that I think would be good for our panel discussion coming up here shortly to hear from all of our participants and presenters about what their experience or thoughts are on these questions. They're kind of more philosophical on what the importance of being trauma-informed is. So we're going to hold on to those. I am seeing them. Keep sending them in. Thank you so much for being so engaged. And thank you all so much again, the team from Northern Kentucky, for sharing and walking us through what you guys have been doing. Again, you certainly have not been bored over the last 16 months. You've been very busy. So thank you so much for just taking a little bit of time to share with us what you've been doing. So with that, we're going to jump on to our last, but certainly not least, presentation for today. We're going to be hearing from Jennifer over in Nebraska at the Department of Health and Human Services. So Jennifer, it looks like you're unmuted. Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and we'll get started with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I just wanted to say for Dawn's, we actually use the same survey, so I can send a PDF to you, Hyacinth, so you can send it out.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Do I need to pull up the presentation or?
Nope, just tell me next slide whenever you're ready to go forward.
Okay, because I'm still seeing just the questions from Kentucky.
I'm sorry, wait. It should be ahead. Give me just a second. You know what? That's why. Give me just a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I was clicking it on my end. So it's showing up for me, but not. Oh, sorry.
And like she said, I'm Jennifer Gervaldes. I'm with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, and our project is a little bit different because we were statewide as opposed to a local agency or a smaller area. We did all 93 counties and all 9 agencies. I didn't focus on my presentation on the challenges and successes because we had a lot of challenges up front before we got to March 1st when we did our self-assessment. We aimed very large and very high with our project goals, and we needed to really condense them down in order to get some results in 15 months. We had hoped to train staff on trauma-informed practices and have them giving them to clients, and we were taking on way too much. So we narrowed it down to doing the self-assessment, which I'll talk about, and then we have our next steps is to provide training to our program managers with each agency, focusing on family development department. So I didn't go much into the challenges and successes just because we had a lot of challenges in the beginning. So to get us to this point, I think we're doing very well. We did the self-assessment, and it sounds like we did the same format that Dawn did. We used the, excuse me, National Center on Family Homelessness Trauma-Informed Organizational Toolkit, and it was the organizational self-assessment. That was the tool that we used, that we copied the questions onto SurveyMonkey to make it easier for the agencies to use. It is a very large survey. It's 135 questions, so it was pretty intensive. We had 175 participants. We had asked executive directors to have 10% of their workforce complete it. We did get to that goal. We have some very small staff, as you can see by the numbers represented there. One of the challenges was with, as you can see the numbers with CAPWIN, the third one down, their responses, 76 responses, really skewed the results more towards them. So we had to do some massaging of the data and decided to pull out the results by agency as opposed to as a whole. So that's why we're still reviewing the results. Our goal is to have a good idea of where people are focused on by June 1, if not mid-June, for the trainings to happen by September 30th. You can go to the next slide. And like I said before, we're planning to take the survey results and plan for one training for program directors in targeting the family development program, but others are welcome to attend. I took a lot of notes from the previous presenters because I would like to include our weatherization department, our housing departments across the state. And so it's open to any program director at any of the 9 agencies. So hopefully we'll be able to get some of those same reactions that the other presenters had. So like I said, we'd like to conduct it by September 30th. We will put together a feedback survey after the training to see where people want to continue with trauma-informed care, and then present it to the Canton Board of Directors at their October 2017 board meeting. And then the next bullet where it says work with CAPWIN, NCFF, and DHHS, what I forgot to mention is even though I'm doing the presentation, we have some key partners. Betsy Vidlock at CAPWIN is my content expert. She's certified in trauma-informed training, and so she's leading the presentations and helping with some of the research examination. NCFF is Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, and they're helping us with the data analysis and helping us connect to the other statewide trauma-informed initiatives that are going on. And then, of course, DHHS, that's my employer, and we have various trauma-informed projects going on that we hope to connect into after we've done our pilot. And then really our next step is to determine where the project goes for calendar 2018. As you know, if you're a local agency, there's a lot of requirements coming down in 2018, so we're not quite sure where the trauma-informed process will fit in, or if we'll kind of try to implement it into the other stuff that's required as we move forward, but we're really letting the agencies direct that. Because one of the challenges as well as the success for this program is because we are the state CSBG program, we have a little more quote-unquote authority when we're asking agencies to do these things, do these projects, and so we need to find a fine line between mandating it and saying because it's coming from our state office that they have to do it, to having it be more of a collaborative effort. So that's really, it's short but sweet, so it's, that's really where we are. We'll be conducting the trainings and assessing the survey results. and kind of see where the trends are. If NCFF and Kaplan are looking at them right now, so if they get the results done before Hyacinth sends out the slides, I'll try and get an update with some of the results on there for people to see. They just aren't done as of today. The next slides just kind of show you what DHHS does as a whole. You can quickly go through these. You can probably go to the next slide as well. It just shows kind of the stuff that we accomplished. So it shows that we, you know, as a department, we're very busy. And so trying to make the trauma-informed processes fit with other work that the other departments are doing can be a process. So we're not quite sure where it's going to go from here. And you can go, I think, to the last slide is my contact information. But oh, nope. There we go. So if you have any questions, you can email me at the address. My email address is there, or my phone number. So very short but sweet.
So excellent. Thank you so much for that, Jennifer. Thank you for walking through. But if I can put you on the spot a little bit, I think sure. One thing, since you did have to say that you guys are still a work in progress, but maybe if you could talk a little bit about the rating that some of the other agencies gave, what you would rate yourself when you guys first started out with us in the learning community, and what you would rate yourselves now on a scale of 1 to 5.
Oh, sure. I would say I was definitely a 1 when I took this on. We had some staff changes within DHHS, within my department. My supervisor changed. I would say he's probably at a 2 or 3. So it's been a big help having him in here to bring his expertise in, but he's only been here since October. So trying to integrate all that in there. I would say Bessie, who's our content expert, was definitely, I would say she was a 4 in terms of how to do the training, and maybe a 2 or 3 in the content of knowing how we were going to move forward with this project. And I'd say she's probably still around that 4, 5 area now that she's seen the results. For me, I'd say I'm maybe a 3 at the end. I think there's still a lot to learn. I know I was talking with, I can't remember if it was Catherine or is it Ellen?
Elena, I'm
sorry.
Close.
That it was just overwhelming for me how much information was out there and how to decide what was the best tool, because we would decide on a tool, then I'd find another one, and finally it was Betsy who said, we just need to pick an assessment tool, go with it, and then highlight the, you know, if there were problems with it or questions that people had, we just need to put those in the comment section and move forward and stop trying to find the best survey tool. So that was probably the biggest challenge for me, was just all the information that was out there and not wanting to pick the wrong one.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a plethora of resources. I think other participants in this group would echo that. And I think that was one of the challenges that we saw across the board. All right, there's a lot of great stuff, but okay, let me just pick something and get started.
Right. And that was one of the negative responses on the survey, was just how overly academic it was.
Right.
How the questions were difficult for frontline staff to understand in some instances, so we just made a note of that, but explained that we couldn't change the content of the questions because then it would change the evidence base.
Right. So thank you so much for that, Jennifer. Like you said, short, sweet, but to the point. Still emphasizing and underscoring that you have been up to a lot. You just summarized it in a very succinct way. But again, what differentiates your work from the other agencies that we heard from is that you're working to do this across the whole state. So it's going to take a while before we see some real results. So not discouraged. And you tripled what you said was your, you know, your knowledge of being trauma informed. So that's still a pretty big accomplishment. So thank you. Okay, so we got a few questions in while you were talking, but I think they would be better served again for a panel discussion, which we're getting ready to do. And I see here that Catherine Marshall, our other subject matter expert, was able to join us on the call today. So Catherine, thank you so much. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to just talk a little bit about your role and what you feel like your opinion has been by participating in this group.
Yes, can you hear me?
Oops. Yeah, you're coming through great. Oh, now you're on mute.
Good. Okay.
Now you're good.
Well, I think of my role as more of a background piece. I've been trying to support Elena as well as the participants, and I've just been really impressed that all the participants in the learning cluster that I've been working with have really done so much. Despite so many challenges, they've just made so much progress. It's just pretty amazing. So I just really want to congratulate all of them. But my role has just been kind of help coordinate with the learning cluster piece, and so I'm happy to just enjoy everyone's fruits of their labor here. So I'm really appreciating the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Catherine. So might be called on a little bit in this panel discussion if you wanted to chime in maybe from your perspective as kind of, like you said, an external kind of logistics person. But we'll jump into some of these more general philosophical questions that we've had come in about being trauma-informed and what that kind of looks like on the ground and why this is important. So the first one is a big one, but I think we'll just dive right into these questions. And this is for all of our panelists. Feel free to jump in at any time. But someone asked, what really is different, what difference does it make once someone becomes trauma-informed? How do they interact differently with clients or perhaps even other staff? Can you just tell us from your experience, how does being trauma-informed ultimately help us to serve families in our communities better? Don't all jump at once. Anyone is free to answer.
Lauren from WestCap, I can give it a shot here.
Thank you.
So one of the things that we really try to impress upon our staff at our all-staff training is this idea of universal precautions. And so when you're trauma-informed, approaching everybody that you're interacting with, both clients and coworkers, as if they have experienced trauma somewhere in their history. And you may not know it, and they may not share it with you, but to kind of always have that trauma lens when you're interacting with someone, the same way that if somebody injured themselves at work and there's blood, the first thing you're going to do is go put on gloves. We've all been trained that there's blood-borne illness and disease, and you don't know what anybody else has or doesn't have, and it's not offensive to put gloves on to protect yourself. Same sort of approach when you're interacting with people, is to assume that there's a history of trauma there. And so then that really changes the way somebody might communicate and also interpret the way somebody is being. So if somebody is calling our front desk and they are yelling and talking very fast and interrupting the receptionist, rather than saying, okay, this is somebody who's just really rude and really demanding and I'm not going to help them because of the way they're talking to me, and kind of getting this, your own defensive nature when interacting with that person, when you put that trauma lens on, it's, okay, this person's in crisis. I don't know what's been going on for them, but I'm getting the result of whatever's been happening either today or last week or last year or in their childhood, and so I can stay calm because this isn't about me. I can react calmly and compassionately, and when you do that, when you really have that genuine interaction with somebody that way, that other person who is in crisis starts to calm down because they're feeling heard and respected. And so sometimes Dravid just refers to it as treating all human beings as human beings and the same way you would want to be treated regardless of how you're acting. But I think it even goes beyond that of just, you know, when you make that assumption that something may have happened in somebody's life, something traumatic, we watch our language. We don't use words like, oh, she's so crazy, or they're a frequent flyer. You know, those kinds of things aren't very trauma-informed words and phrases, and it becomes such a part of our of a culture sometimes that it has to be pointed out before you realize that you're not being very trauma-informed. The other one that I am working to change within our agency is the idea of frontline staff. The front lines are in a war, and we aren't in a war. We are in the business of serving people and helping people, and so we have direct service staff. But even that change, you know, frontline workers implies that they're in a battle with the clients versus they provide the direct service to clients. And so it just really changes how you interact and how you view your role overall.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Corinne. Does anyone else want to offer their thoughts, their feelings on that question?
Go ahead. I think, this is Kelly at NKCAC. I think once you understand how trauma and how, like, childhood stress or any type of traumatic event affects someone, actually affects their brain and how their health, and then it changes the way that you respond to things. And I think once you understand that, it's kind of like she was saying, if you understand where it's coming from, your reaction is going to be different. I know that if I had known everything that I know now about, like, the ACEs, you know, scoring and stuff like that, that there's some relationships in my own life that, you know, that I could have reacted to differently. So it doesn't just apply to clients, but it really is an overall impact on someone's health and well-being when they have that traumatic event.
It's a basic understanding, you know, and I think it gives you that permission to have that level of understanding and to reach out to that person in a very human way.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Any other thoughts or comments? Otherwise, I can move on to another question that we got in. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pose another question to the group. So were any of you surprised about the amount of secondhand trauma that your staff were reporting or experiencing? And can you talk a little bit about how you worked to address that?
This is Dawn from NKCAC. Actually, that's pretty much what precipitated our involvement with the group and our application to be part of the learning group is how prevalent so many of our staff, you know, members were experiencing, you know, just their responses were not wonderful, you know, to the things that were happening in the facilities and with their interactions with those who are visiting our facilities. Just as, I think as leaders and managers and supervisors, we were all sort of seeing such a huge increase in the number of just high intensity crisis-oriented interactions that were happening across every department through interactions, you know, just in between staff members, let alone, you know, families who are coming in crisis and not responding well to them. So we were not surprised. That's a long answer, but we were not surprised.
It's interesting. This is Natasha from Don's group, and as soon as you asked that question, all of us started shaking our heads right away, like, no, this is what drove us here.
Thank you for that. Any other perspectives on that question?
This is Jennifer with Nebraska. Since I do most of the on-site reviews for the agencies, for me, I don't have the day-to-day direct service contact with clients. So one of the questions that I actually implemented into our on-site review was to ask the direct service providers how they take care of themselves, how do they not internalize the stories that they hear from clients. So I wouldn't say I was surprised. I was happy that most of the people I talk to have ways to cope and have come up with things that work for them. And then I have learned through this process to put my questions a little differently, because the first year I asked it was probably about 6 years ago, and the direct service providers went to the executive director and said I called them crazy, when in fact all I asked was, how do you make sure you don't internalize this? So I've now asked the question a little differently to not scare off the providers. and asking them how they take care of themselves to not internalize that.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay, if not, I think we have time for one more quick question. In your efforts to be more trauma-informed and to really make this an organizational mindset, did any of you all experience significant pushback from other departments in your efforts?
This is Dawn at Northern Kentucky, and no, we didn't. We initially maybe anticipated that there might be some from some of our internal customer service departments like HR or finance, and I tell you, they've embraced it as much as everyone else. So.
Thank you.
This is Corin at WestCap. As I had said during our presentation, we were concerned about pushback from, in particular, our weatherization department, and possibly from some of our board members, our board of director members, and that ended up not being the case at all. And some of the greatest insights, I think, came from some of our weatherization crews when we had our all-staff training. We had screened Rich Hill as well, and so we had done part of the training talking about what is trauma and what does it look like, and then we watched the movie or the documentary while we were eating lunch, and then we had some small group discussions after that, and there was some really amazing insights into the impact of trauma and the intersection with poverty on these kids' lives and their parents' lives, and it was just a really cool thing to hear from who maybe would have been the more unexpected people to speak up about it. And then the same thing with our board members. I mean, they are not necessarily coming from a human services background, and they were very open to understanding more about trauma and how it shapes the work that we're doing. So it was really refreshing to see so many people, I mean, really across the board, everybody on board with this idea and wanting to learn more and do the best that they can. It was pretty cool.
That's great to hear. Anyone else? Any other comments or thoughts on that? Okay, if not, I do want to be mindful of everyone's time because I know we are pushing up towards the end of our allotted time for today's event, but I just want to take a moment to thank, once again, all of our presenters for all of the hard work that you've been doing and for taking, this time out of your day to share what your experience has been. We've had a lot of good questions about people interested in getting started and where they can find resources, and I'm going to talk about that in just a bit, but it seems like you guys have really lit a fire under some of the people that have been able to attend today's webinar. So I just want to thank you for taking the time out to share your resources and experiences with us. So thank you all very much. All right, so I'm going to turn my camera back on so you can see me. I'll just walk through our concluding slides really quick. I know a lot of you have asked about where's a good place to find resources, where can you see some of the templates or other things that were talked about during today's event. I'm actually going to skip back a little bit in our presentation, but a great place to look for that is on the Learning Community blog. Each of our Learning Community groups actually has an individual section on the resources page, but particularly for the trauma-informed group, you can find all of the resources that were shared throughout our 16-month cohort. There you can find tools on self-assessment, beginning reading on what exactly is trauma and how that impacts both clients and staff, and other resources, infographics on how to explain why trauma is important, how it works, things like that. So that is a good place to start. Again, you can see the link here on your screen. You can find all of that at lcrcweb.com, and we continue to update that website regularly. So please go check there, and you can see what we've been talking about. So thank you so much for those questions. So I'm going to skip back ahead. Give me just a second. So if you liked what you heard today, the Learning Community also does a plethora, a depth, and wealth of other webinar events that are free and made available to you all. And speaking of training and thinking about how to work with staff, another webinar event that we're going to be hosting in the next couple of weeks will be our Your Money, Your Goals Train the Trainer event. We're very excited to be partnering with CSPB as they're administering this year's cohort of Your Money, Your Goals. And through that, we are able to offer a Train the Trainer event. So we're going to have two. That's going to be held on June 12th will be the first one, and then a week later on June 19th. Both of those are going to be at 1 p.m. They're going to be about 2 hours each, and they're not only going to walk through the curriculum, but also teach attendees on interactive exercises to help adult learners as they walk through this financial empowerment curriculum. These are available to anyone who is interested and has time and would like to attend. Registration information on this event will be forthcoming soon, so please keep your eyes out on the partnership's main website. I was going to tell you to go back to the blog, although you can find it there too, but you can find it the easiest probably on the partnership's website. We really do appreciate all of your feedback and questions. We really like for all of our events to be very engaging. So if you have just a moment, you can actually click on the link here on your screen, and that'll take you to a very brief survey. We would really appreciate your feedback, and we will definitely use it and apply it to our future webinar events. But we would love to hear what you thought about what you heard from the presenters, and maybe what we could even do a little bit better to make these webinar events more accessible to you all. So here you will find the contact information for not just myself, but for the entire Training and Technical Assistance Department here at the Partnership. Please feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions, suggestions, concerns that you have on not just our webinars, but any of the training offerings that are made available to you all, and we would be happy to either direct you to the right person or answer those questions. So please feel free to reach out to any of us with any of your needs. Finally, just going to close with a shameless plug for our annual convention, which is going to be taking place in Philadelphia this year, and that's going to be occurring on August 29th through September 1st. If you are really interested in what you heard today, we're actually going to be hosting a general session at this year's conference featuring members of the learning community from all of our groups talking about their major lessons learned, what their experience was in our cohort, and kind of sharing, like I said, their major key takeaways for anyone who is interested in getting started in any of their specific topic areas, what they would recommend for you starting off. So with that, I want to thank you all once again for your time, and that will conclude today's webinar presentation. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah.